So when in a competitive market where you have a lot of different products out there that are being sold, a lot of people are selling goods, a lot of people or a lot of businesses who are selling goods, a lot of people are buying them. There are four basic types of markets. Okay? And when we talk about a market, we don't necessarily talk about a business being in a market. Instead, it's a product that is in the market. And so, for example, a pharmaceutical company may produce a good that they have a product they have a patent on, where they're the only seller, whereas they may produce something else where there's 20 different alternatives to it. So those two products are in different market types. So when we talk about markets, we talk about the product and not the firm. So firms that are making the products are going to operate in one of four market types: perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. So we're going to look at these all individually and in great detail, including their decisions. But let's just quickly look through at the basic characteristics of all of them. So first is perfect competition. Now, in perfect competition, you have many firms. Now, perfect competition is what we've been assuming most of the time so far, especially when we looked at supply and demand. So there's many firms. They have a homogeneous product, which means that every single product that is produced is exactly the same. An example is white sugar or brown sugar, okay, wheat, flour, and so forth. There's free entry and exit. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't cost anything. What I'm saying is that there's really nothing stopping a new firm from entering. Now, you may need the money to do that, but there's always people with money who can do this. Now, because of the free entry and exit, and we'll talk about this a little more when we talk about perfect competition, what happens is in the long run, profits end up being zero. Now, the other thing that's very specific to a perfectly competitive market is that each firm is what is called a price taker. The market determines the price, and each firm has no influence on that. They all sell at that price. So that's perfect competition. The next one we have is a monopoly. Monopoly, just one firm. If you ever played the Monopoly game, the goal of the game is to be the one person who owns everything. Okay. So because there's just one firm, there's only a single product. Now, the reason why there's only one firm is that there are some very strong barriers to entry. There's something that is stopping other firms from coming in. Now, long-run profits are possible here. And each firm, they can set the price whatever they want. So they're price makers. Now, an example here is not so much now, but when Microsoft I believe it was in the 90s, they got sued. And they got sued because the claim was that they had a monopoly on internet browser. So Windows, what happened was, when there were other operating systems that were out there, but they were really the main one. And within Windows, you could only have Internet Explorer as your browser. They made you buy it with that when you bought Windows. And so the idea was that no one else could come in and you couldn't put anyone else's internet browser on there. So they got sued for that. It was found that they did have a monopoly on internet browsers, and so they had to open it up. And now it's no longer a monopoly. Now you have Internet Explorer, you have Firefox, you have Google Chrome, which is the biggest one right now. But that's just an example of a monopoly. So for the most part, very few firms fall into the perfect competition and monopoly. Where you're going to see most firms falling into place is in the next two. Okay. The first one is monopolistic competition. Now, monopolistic competition, is kind of a hybrid between perfect competition and monopoly. So just like perfect competition, there are many firms, there's free entry and exit, and because of that, long-run profits get driven to zero. The difference, however, from perfect competition is that they don't have a homogeneous product. They have a differentiated product, which means that every product that each firm sells is a little bit different. So each firm essentially is acting in some way as a monopoly. So an example for this is cheeseburgers. There's a lot of different places you can buy cheeseburgers. Each one is just a little bit different. Okay? So no two places have the same cheeseburger. Clothing is another example. Right? So jeans. Lots of places sell jeans. None are exactly the same. So this is where probably the largest number of firms are going to fall in. Now, the fourth and final one is an oligopoly. The oligopoly doesn't have one firm, it doesn't have many, it has a few. Now, the products they produce can either be identical or slightly different. So the reason why there's only a few is there are barriers to entry. And a lot of times the barriers to entry are very high startup costs. But because there's only a few, long-run profits are possible, and each firm can kind of has an influence on the price, so they're price makers. And so examples of this when it comes to operating systems and computers, you really have the two big ones. You have Apple, smartphones. When it comes to smartphones, the two biggest ones are Apple and Samsung. All right, so you have the Apple phones and you have the Samsung phones. There are some other alternatives out there, but those are the two biggest ones. All right, few firms. All right, in this case, they have differentiated products, but they're very high barriers to entry. Right? They kind of corner the market, and so it's very difficult for a new firm to come in. Another example is cable TV providers. Right? The two biggest ones are, at least in this area, are Verizon, Fios, and Comcast. Again, they have a pretty much identical product there, but there's very few firms because of those high costs of starting up. So those are oligopoly. And here we just have a basic breakdown of all of them. When it comes to number of firms, perfect competition, monopolistic competition have many. Monopoly and oligopoly either have one or few. Product differentiation varies. Ease of entry is linked really to the number of firms, and so perfect competition, monopolistic competition are free, and there's barriers in the other two. And also, when you have that free entry, that is what causes the zero profits in the long run. Okay? And when it comes to price setting, perfect competition, the market sets it, and the firms set the rest of them. Now, these are all going to be discussed in pretty substantial detail, but this just kind of gives a broad overview of all the different market structures.